GRC in every organization should start with a risk management program. So, whenever we are doing a risk management program, the regulatory compliance should always take the first precedence. That should be the utmost important or priority of any organization, because regulations are the most important. They should be the drivers of the GRC program. Now, once we understand what regulations and what impact they are having to the organization, then we will be able to align or create a risk management program which is according to those regulations. Now, next, if there is anything which is company specific policies or governance requirements, that can take the next precedence. So when we talk about regulatory compliance, it can be ISO, it can be FedRAMP, GDPR, HIPAA, FISMA, PCI DSS, or NIST. So sometimes there are common standards and frameworks. For example, CIS benchmarks. So sometimes that would be common standards and frameworks, but at other times, some of the regulations will be industry specific. Like HIPAA would be applicable to healthcare industry, whereas the SOX compliance, the SOX, or PCI DSS would be applicable to the financial services and insurance industry. At the same time, regulations like GDPR, CCPA, LGPD, PEPADA, they would be more applicable for those companies who are either the data owners or data processors who are dealing with the privacy of individuals or citizens of any country. So once we are done with the risk management program, then comes the assessing the scope of the information system. So when we are assessing the scope, so we should understand the architecture, how the data is flowing, what are the internal connections, what are the external connections, and what is the business functionality required, and what is the purpose why we are doing this. So in this process, we understand the various standards and frameworks which help us in categorizing the information systems in a way that we would be able to be ready for the implementation. So once we are done that, then we proceed to selecting the different types of controls. So next we proceed to the control phase. So in the control phase, we need to first understand what kind of controls we need to do, and we want to baseline some controls so that becomes a baseline or a standard how we can do the implementation. So prior to the implementation, we can do some selection and assessment of the different types of controls and do that. Now, once we have done that, then comes the most important step, is like implementing the different kinds of GRC controls or security and privacy controls, whatever are applicable, based on either privacy and regulatory compliance or based on the standards. So we can do that. Now, after doing the implementation, it is very important to document that. If you do not document that, there is no evidence that what kind of controls we are doing. Because if there is an audit or an assessment at a later stage, or any government bodies might demand the documentation or the way you are implementing the GRC controls in your organization. So that might be imperative and good to have the documentation of the same. Okay, so once we've done that, it is very important to continuously assess the controls what we have done. So here, different kinds of internal and external audit come into play. So you may conduct an internal audit to assess how your implementation of the controls for these regulatory requirements or governance and privacy requirements are done. So that helps you in understanding the current position, whether you are prepared, whether there are some gaps. So if there are some gaps, then you document those and you prepare a report. Based on that, you develop a remediation plan. Okay. So once that is done, now you come to a position where you understand that you have now a good GRC or a governance and risk and compliance program for your organization. So then you may obtain the approval of your senior management that this is an effective GRC program which has been tried and tested. So once we have done that, this is not enough. Now, any program has to be continuously monitored. So, continuous monitoring is very essential, because obviously, in continuous monitoring, we're going to discuss like if there is a change to any environment, so what kind of impact it is going to have on that. And continuously, you have to do some assessments and audits based on the requirements. And incident response planning also we have to do. If something happens, then what kind of incident response plans we would have. And sometimes we should also prepare for the descoping or decommissioning of certain systems which are no longer required in this GRC program. So in brief, this was something about the strategy, how a GRC program could be initiated, implemented, and governed in an organization. And to be honest, this is a standard program. It could be different based on the organization's policies. It could be tailored and customized based on their requirements and their organization structure. But this is what the idea which I had. Thank you. I hope I was useful in explaining the scenarios and the ideas how a GRC program would run. Thanks.